Welcome back to the Placeholder Podcast, everybody. I'm Caley Fretz. We got a great show for you this week, as always. We're going to talk a little Van der Poel, a little Jim Ratcliffe, a little Pope. The Pope is in this episode. That's different. Anyway, joining me for this week's episode, Kit Nicholson. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
And Dane Cash, straight off a superb episode of How the Race Was Won. How are you, Dane?
I'm good. We should clarify, Pope Francis is not actually in this episode. We talk about the Pope, but we did not get, a chat with Pope Francis in this show. I just wanted to make sure that was clear to people.
We did reach out. Unfortunately, we were ignored. So let's just kick straight into things here. We obviously had a fantastic edition of Milan-San Remo over the weekend. I hope everybody watched it. I hope everybody watched that last 20 minutes. I think basically the best 20 minutes in all of pro cycling. Routinely the best 20 minutes in all of pro cycling. Kit and Dane making faces at me now.
I agree. No, for sure.
And I also hope that you caught yesterday's How the Race Was Won episode, which obviously runs through how that race was won, in addition to a bit of a debate between Dane Cash and myself over whether Pogačar can ever win that race, and if so, how he should do that. Make sure you pick up that episode if you haven't already. But actually, we're going to kick off today's show with, I guess sort of a supporting character in Saturday's Milan-San Remo, which is, he's not usually a supporting character. This is Mathieu van der Poel I'm talking about. And of course, he was instrumental in the victory of Jasper Philipsen, his teammate. He closed all sorts of gaps, pulled all sorts of riders back, Mohoric, Pidcock, all the rest. But what we want to talk about is some news that came out on Monday. Some unusual sponsor news. Dane, what's so unusual about the announcement we got from Van der Poel and his bike sponsor yesterday?
Yeah, Van der Poel is committed to sticking with his bike sponsor, German brand Canyon, for the next 10 years, which in and of itself is pretty wild, that he's got a commitment to a bike brand specifically, as opposed to whatever brand the team he is on is riding. And he also has a contract extension with Alpecin-Deceuninck, which is a 3-year deal. And then Canyon and Alpecin also extended their deal to some degree that we don't know. So he's got his deal with Alpecin-Deceuninck for the next 3 years. He's got 10 years commitment with Canyon. I don't really know what happens should there be a falling out between himself and the management at Alpecin-Deceuninck, and he needs to leave that team and go somewhere else. But anyway, 10 years with Canyon, that's quite a long time. And that's what he has been riding on since he became, the superstar roadie that he is. But yeah, he's 29 now, so he'll be riding on a Canyon for quite some time to the end of his 30s.
That's an interesting point because that, it could be a post-retirement deal, a la, I don't know, anyone who's retired and still rides a bike.
Valverde, Sagan.
Yeah.
Well, Sagan's not technically retired, but you know what I mean. Specialized is still around.
Note for bike grid players, Peter Sagan is on a Continental team this year. He's technically an active rider, so keep that in mind. Yeah,
even if he's only spending the year in and out of hospital having his heart attended to.
That happens to the best of
Poor
us.
chap.
Yeah,
really could have used Valverde doing the same thing.
I agree with that for sure.
For yesterday's, I think it was bike grid. Was it bike grid 10? Dane,
that was hard, man.
I really needed some Valverde.
I was useless yesterday.
My bike grid.
Sounds like y'all just need to spend a little more time researching cycling, and then maybe you'll get better at the game. I don't know, just a thought.
I'm working on it. I feel like every time I do the game, I pull another piece of information into my brain, right? So I feel like I'm going to get better and better and better at it. Anyway, back to Van der Poel and this quite unusual sponsorship arrangement. Now, I think the thing that maybe underpins this, and we did reach out to the team for comment on this particular thing. The spokesperson for the team responded. Our question was basically, okay, does Van der Poel does he own a piece of this team? Does he have like additional stake in this team with the Rudhooft brothers that run Alpecin-Deceuninck? Because to have a sponsorship arrangement that's that long, as you alluded to in your little intro there, Dane, is it doesn't make a lot of sense unless they're very confident that Van der Poel's sticking with that program for basically his entire career. And one of the things that would make that make sense is if Van der Poel was actually like a part owner of that program or had some other sort of stake in the project. And if you guys will remember, back in the Netflix series, right, the Netflix Tour de France series, Unchained, there was a bit of sort of chatter around that kind of topic where they made it really clear that Van der Poel was sort of, one, the person that the team was built around, but also two, like a little bit more instrumental in the creation of that program and the longevity of that program than a normal superstar rider would be. So our question was, okay, well, does he have equity in this thing? Like, does he have a partner ownership stake? And the spokesperson responded and said that our question was inappropriate and didn't answer. So very, very strange there. And honestly makes me think that the answer to that is possibly yes. We're gonna continue to dig on that. Because it's something that has been thrown around previously. I just haven't seen any details on it. And again, it does harken back to some comments that were made in that Netflix show that would indicate that Van der Poel is more than a rider at that team.
He has shown, since really this team has kind of gone to the second division and beyond, he has certainly had a major role in most decisions that are made. And I would say that the contract extension is more evidence of something that we already, like you said, with the Netflix doc. But there's already been plenty of reasons I would think that this is true for this team. I can't think of any other team at the top division that is as built around the ambitions of a rider. Even if they have riders like Jasper Philipsen now getting big wins, this was always about Van der Poel from the beginning. And I think it would certainly make sense. Put it that way.
Well, and like part of the reason why Philipsen gets, the sort of plan A treatment at Milan-San Remo is because it's Van der Poel's first road race of the season. So I think if Milan-San Remo was in May, I'm sure that Van der Poel might stick his hand up and say, actually, I think I can win this one. And it meant things might go a little bit differently. And that has been, he's been a great teammate, right? I mean, just think back to all the times he was leading out Philipsen at the Tour de France, right? But everything points to Van der Poel having some sort of additional power, sway, whether that's formalized or not is unclear. But there's something else going on. And again, that's what would underpin the confidence to say, all right, Canyon can do a 10-year deal with us, because if Van der Poel moved to Ineos, that deal doesn't work anymore, right? They have to be very sure that is not going to be the case.
Unless Ineos goes over to a Canyon bike, which
you never know.
Who knows?
Never know. Yeah. But that starts to get very complicated at that point, right?
If we were a sports talk radio outfit, I would think we should now be talking about how he's definitely going to end up at Movistar in a few years. The other Canyon team, right?
The other Canyon team?
That, to me, is the inevitable outcome. But we're not a sports talk radio outfit, so we won't go down that road.
Maybe they'll just revive Katusha, and which also rode Canyon back in the day, and he'll swap over to Katusha. What do you think? No?
Definitely. I buy it. Why not?
All right. Well, we just thought that was interesting. I thought the response from the press officer was quite interesting, and yeah, something we're going to kind of keep an eye on and try to figure out, because I think he's a rider at a level of celebrity that we don't see that often, right? There's only a couple per generation, and so when you have that sort of level of celebrity, you do start to sort of supersede the team that you're on in many ways, in the same way that like Peter Sagan used to do that.
Alejandro
right?
Valverde and Movistar.
Exactly, Valverde and Movistar, and it changes the dynamic considerably. And if that dynamic was then sort of built into the structure of the relationship between the athlete and the team, that would make sense, right? And so if this is an example of that happening, I think it's worth digging into. Moving on from Van der Poel and his unusual sponsor arrangement, let's head over to a race that's actually, as we record, is currently happening. I think there's about 4K to go. We're just going to brief update, and then we're going to discuss this a little bit more once we actually know what happens. But what's going on at Catalunya right now?
The rider who, I think, having come to terms with the fact that he'll probably never win Milan-San Remo, Tadej Pogačar has headed over to Spain, and he is, because he's such a small climber guy, he's climbing to a ski station right now. And that gradient is hard enough for him to put about 40...
And long enough, yeah.
We're about 40 seconds right now as he heads up to Volter 2000 ski station in pretty rough conditions. It's not pleasant over there in Catalunya. And he has dropped everybody else we got a chase group with: Joe Almeida, Kian Brooks, Mikel Landa, Egan Bernal, Lenny Martinez, Alexander Vlasov, a couple other riders there. Yeah, hasn't finished yet. Certainly looks like he's about to take a pretty significant lead.
Can I present a miniature weekly pain for us for the next 3.5 kilometers? How big is his gap going to be?
He says it's 40 right now.
It's
we've lost gap. Actually, they no longer are showing us the gap.
Well, let's say
on
it's somewhere between 35 and 45 seconds. Let's call
it 56 seconds.
Ooh, I'm gonna say 40.
Okay.
We're not going to do live commentary for a show.
No. Well, there are 3 kilometers to go, and it's just one guy riding into a mountain.
No live commentary for a bike race that is 24 hours ago by the time anyone listens to this.
Yeah.
We're going to return to this subject. The reason I just want to sort of tease it is we want to talk about Pogacar. We want to talk about Catalonia and some of the things like the fact that Egan Bernal is up there, which I think is fantastic. But we're going to return to that in 10 minutes once the race is over. We do have more to chat about before then. So on Geraint Thomas's podcast this week, was it the Geraint Thomas Cycling Club podcast or something like that?
Yeah.
GTCC.
Great show. Genuinely really enjoyable. And he often has some really interesting folks on that podcast. And this week he had none other than Sir Jim Ratcliffe on his pod.
The big boss.
Of course, the big boss. Of course, the billionaire owner of Ineos. Ineos Grenadiers, the cycling team, also the part owner now of Manchester United, which he got some ribbing for because Geraint Thomas appears to be an Arsenal fan. But one of the interesting things that was said on this podcast is where Ratcliffe basically said he would rather find the next cycling superstar than buy him, which, given all of the reporting, a lot of which was pretty firm around essentially Ineos trying to snag Remco Evenepoel last fall. I think that's an interesting pivot. I think it's an interesting and frankly makes more sense perhaps for that team in the place that it's in right now. What do we feel about it?
They do have a very young class coming up through the ranks, and some of them are very talented. I mean, is it a pivot or is it a kind of compromise? But still, that's just me presenting my cynicism. I think that's a much more interesting way to build a team. It's maybe not the most successful way to build a team, but it's also refreshing to hear that from a team boss, where we so often think, I mean, if you think of the Patrick Lefevre's and moving on people who aren't getting results, it's the idea of cultivating talent. I don't know. It's a better story.
Is it more? It's more about talent identification than talent cultivation, I would say.
Well, yeah, but you've
right?
got to look after them, haven't you?
You do. Yeah. But so here's a question. What team is currently best at this in the World Tour? What team is currently snacking? What team is snacking? What team is currently grabbing the majority of the sort of young talent that's popping up?
I mean, I would suggest that it would be Visma and UAE. UAE has probably done a little bit more of that recently, but both of those teams fill that role. For Ineos, though, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've said this on the podcast enough times that I'll just keep this short, but I always want to come back to the fact that this team found a superstar, next level, generational talent who then hit the back of a bus. And they invested a lot in him. And that, I literally we're watching him right now at Catalonia. He has gotten dropped, which is a bit of a bummer. But that has been something that they have taken years to recover from. But maybe they're finally recovering from it. They do have, as we said, young talents.
Yeah, I was good. But the answer to that question that I just asked, I think for me is UAE.
Yeah.
Right. I think Visma has been pretty good at grabbing those riders in their second contract. Right. I'm thinking of grabbing Mathieu Jorgensen and things like that because they're currently the team that all these riders want to go to. But I would actually, to UAE's credit, whoever's doing the scouting over there, and we should find out who this is and maybe chat with them. I think that'd be interesting. They're doing an exceptional job, and they're not afraid to go in for these riders that have, that kind of pop out of nowhere.
Straight from the junior ranks, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm thinking specifically of riders like they were the ones that grabbed Isaac Del Toro
and Pogacar
last year, right? And Pogacar, right? Pogacar now a couple years ago. But, Isaac Del Toro at the end of last year, he does some incredible things at Tour de l'Avenir. But prior to that had been relatively unknown unless you followed junior racing very, very closely. And UAE were the ones that stepped in and, got that across the line, right? So I think they're doing an exceptional job. But I haven't seen Ineos do that much of that in the last couple of years, right? They pulled in Josh Tarling, who is obviously a massive talent, and he's only 20. And some of the youngest folks on the earth. He's also just massive generally. They've got the young American Andrew August, who has a huge amount of potential, but I'm not sure sort of like Pogacar level potential. Theodore Storm, Michael Leonard, and Magnus Sheffield are the other sort of youngest riders over on Ineos. And none of them, at least at this point in time, have shown the kind of I'm going to be a world beater kind of level of talent. Whereas, Isaac Del Toro in his first Milan-San Remo nearly does the whole job for Tadej Pogacar, right? He's going to be an incredible rider. Yeah, Ineos I haven't seen do that.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if one of those Ineos riders was even given a leadership role at somewhere. If you think of Evenepoel winning San Sebastian in his first year pro at what was he, 18, 19? Definitely still a teenager. I could see, I mean, obviously we've already seen Del Toro win this season. But I think if we're talking teams and talent and youth, obviously they're not quite on the same level as Pogacar and Del Toro, possibly even Tarling on a kind of world-beating level. But the French outfits of AG2R and Groupama FDJ with their continental crew, they get graduates every single year. I think last year was Groupama's intake solely from their under-23 lineup. And some of them have been, the Paris-Pantras of this world getting into, did he win a stage at the Giro last year, Paris-Pantra? Well, anyway, there are some very, very, very good riders in the French ranks, and they all come through the same outfits.
No, hold on one second.
He won a stage, yeah.
He won the 5th stage. No.
4th stage. He won the 4th stage of last year's Giro.
Obviously, we don't consider them in the same spheres as who we've already mentioned for UAE. But I think there's definitely an institution at work there that does scoop up talent, and it's not just because they're French.
I mean, FDG and Lenny Martinez is the other one that really comes to mind, right? And
Martinez as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say Martinez probably has a higher ceiling, right? Yeah. If you're looking at where this rider is potentially going to go. I mean, he is currently, as of today...
I mean, he's literally climbing up a mountain right now as we speak.
Yeah. he's 20 years old, 252 days, right? Very, very young still. Comes from good stock, one could say. I think that the ceiling is incredibly high there, and the French teams have done a pretty good job of that. Again, I haven't seen it that much from Ineos, and so if this is the direction that Ratcliffe wants to go, then there's probably some changes that need to be made internally. There's probably some additional investment in scouting that needs to happen and things like that. And I do think that this is, I guess, part of the reason why we wanted to bring it up today is it feels like kind of the direction that cycling is going, because we don't wait for riders to hit 23 years old until they're deemed mature enough for the World Tour anymore, right? Like, you need to find these riders at 16, 17, 18 years old. And that requires a different setup than I think a lot of the teams currently have.
So if you want a deep dive on this subject, you could head on over to escapecollective.com and read a story called How Do Teams Find the Stars of the Future, written by one Dane Cash. And we talked to Mathieu Fernandez at UAE for that story. And I think we talked to someone from Visma as well. Well, they were Jumbo at the time. And in both instances, I mean, Fernandez, Mathieu is like a really well-known talent scout. That's something that he has done for years. In both instances, Olav Koy was the rider that looked like the big, and still does, big get for Jumbo at the time. We shouldn't forget either that they signed Vingegaard as well when he was at Continental. That was not like a second pro contract. That was coming straight up from Colo Quick at the Continental level. And in both cases, they're finding riders who are very young, younger than Ineos has been able to do recently, and they're able to convince them to come aboard with either just money, but I have to imagine it's more than just money. With Fernandez, with Mathieu, he forges a relationship with some of these riders when they are juniors. They know who he is. He's somebody that is known as a talent scout, and so when they get to this level, they're able to kind of go back to that relationship that they already have with the rider. I also think this is a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. It's an exponential growth situation where if you are UAE and you can point to, hey, we signed this Tadej Pogacar kid and look what he's like now. If you're a Visma Lease bike, we signed Jonas Vingegaard, we signed Olav Koy, whatever it is, you can convince the young riders that could be them. And that means success breeds success. And Ineos Grenadiers has not had that success, making it even harder for them to sign those young talents.
I think for Ineos, there has been, if there's been a pivot in Jim Ratcliffe's thinking, obviously this is pre-Jim Ratcliffe, but Ineos or Sky, when at its inception, its purpose was kind of British cycling. It was Dave Brailsford's, let's get Brits on the podium of the Tour de France, let's get Brits winning the Tour de France. And that was successful. And, you've still got Ben Swift and Geraint Thomas and Luke Rowe, and they brought Theo Gegenhardt into pro cycling. They've got some great young British talent through, but for the most part, it's been, the criteria has been British, not age or, to use the same word as I used earlier, cultivation. So that is a bit of a pivot, and that's what's maybe holding them up a little bit, but they're also undergoing, as we're all very aware, a bit of a rebrand with some quite significant reshuffling in staff as well as riders.
I think the other angle here is what appears to be quite a close relationship between Mathieu and UAE in general and agents like Alex Carrera, and sort of the funneling that happens when you have these kind of super agents, we didn't have super agents in cycling for a long time, and we are starting to now. There are agencies now that have really long lists of riders that they're working with, and obviously a couple superstars at the top, and they can move riders around, and they can essentially sort of create pathways for some of their younger riders. They can help with some of the identification. I think that's worth it's worth mentioning as part of maybe UAE's success as well. Is the agents do a pretty good job of identifying some of these young superstars because they have a reason to do so. They have a vested interest in finding these riders early, creating those relationships, and then essentially selling them to the highest bidder, right?
Speaking of those superstars, Pogačar has just won the stage.
By a minute?
There we go. Well,
22. So quite a larger gap even than...
Well, I didn't get a chance to give an answer. I was going to say 112, so I don't know what rules we're playing by, but...
Yeah.
And I know it's easy to say now that he's actually won the stage.
Both of us lose. So.
But I can show you, I wrote it down.
bonus point for Kit. Bonus point.
For those keeping track, that's another win for Caley's drafted team.
Yep.
But
I've also got Lenny Martinez on my team, who was up there.
In terms of value, one of my much later picks, Mikel Landa, did finish second on the day. So I'll take that. That's a solid performance from the Soudal Quickstep rider.
Yeah, Mikel Landa, a rider who I will never get used to in the Soudal Quickstep kit. He's one of the. It's every year we get changes in kit, and
he does. He likes to.
It's hilarious who works in their new kit and who really doesn't, and he's one who just looks so odd in Soudal Quickstep kit. But anyway,
let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk just a brief moment of Catalonia. Welcome back, everybody. Thoughts on Catalonia? We just had an uphill finish. We had sort of one of the first real big uphill finishes of the year. A couple in Pyrenees and Trento, but another nice big one with some big names. Thoughts?
Yeah, I just love that Vlasov is getting top results in bike races when his new big boss teammate, Primož Roglič, is not. I imagine that Vlasov is racing several races at the moment in his own head against one particular man, against his team management, against everyone else in the peloton.
And we didn't give him much credit. I will remind everybody, over the winter, we said that this was a foolish thing. And I believe the quote was something along the lines of, how do you expect to be the team leader at a team where you can't even decide what salad to eat? And well, he's proving that they're
he's got
going
extra
to
motivation.
Yeah. What was his quote? His quote was "the road will decide," basically, right? And the road is currently deciding. So
I believe I said, there's nothing wrong with saying that, and he's doing a good job.
Dane's favorite phrase, chapeau.
Chapeau. To Alexander. Finished third, by the way.
Alexander Vlasov.
Anybody listening will know that by now because this is a day ago that this happened. If you're listening, I would point out that none of the big Roglič is not here, and Jonas Vingegaard not at this race. And Remco Evenepoel not
obviously.
At this race. So
because they like to stay away from each other.
Likeliest riders maybe to challenge Pogačar. But Sepp Kuss is here. I expected him to do a little better.
Yeah, he's at least 2 minutes down.
Yeah. Egan Bernal was up there. Good for him.
I think Uiterbrooks is the top Visma-Lease bike rider.
I think Sepp has very little reason to go real fast for another 3 or 4 months.
Except that this is sort of home roads for him. I mean, so I would have thought he might have wanted to shine. But it's horrible weather. The stage 2 was rough day out. Tadej Pogačar did not seem to mind. Came across the line looking pretty fresh despite it rain snowing on him. And he seemed fine.
Egan Bernal's up there.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Ahead of Enric Mas, which was,
Oh, I feel sorry for Enric Mas. I don't know. There's not much more.
Well, Mathieu Vanderpool will be a teammate of his in a few years, remember? Yeah. So that'll brighten.
And Enric Mas can ride for Vanderpool.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's move on from Catalonia. When we come back, we have thoughts on the opinion of the winner of the 1996 Tour of Luxembourg. Welcome back, everybody. We try to avoid the opinions of the 1996 Tour of Luxembourg.
Can I just say
champion.
real quick, he's also a world champion, right? I mean, like that result stands. So that I would think would be the one that you would hype up if you're.
No, I think 1996 Tour of Luxembourg is really what we're going to go with. Anyway, we tend to try to avoid the opinions of this individual, but it kept popping up on my feed over the weekend, and people were yelling about it. And this is, we just thought it was worth mentioning. So basically, the opinion is, and this is off the back of Milan-San Remo and all of the sort of hugging that was happening after the finish at Milan-San Remo, because Tadej Pogačar and Jasper Philipsen and Michael Matthews are genuine friends. There are photos of Philipsen and Pogačar at the beach together, hanging out, not a bike in sight, right? Just playing at the beach, having a good time. They like each other. And so that was very obvious after the finish that they like each other. And Pogačar said that he would, what was the exact quote? There's nobody I'd rather lose to, was basically the paraphrase of it. Anyway, the 1996 Tour of Luxembourg champion took issue with this level of camaraderie and said that riders need to, be more aggro, stop hugging so much, and get back to an era where everybody hated each other. So we thought we would disagree with this, basically.
Yeah.
Should we, first of all, did you actually say his name for those who don't know who?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't.
We're just not going to say it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we give another clue just in case?
Also, 98. We might want to, work.
Oh, it's 1998. Well,
Yeah.
so, just like the Palmares is so
this
small
guy
and
has got
inconsequential.
7 yellow jumpers that don't belong to him on his living room wall.
Although when I think of a jumper, I think of a skirt, but that's a whole American British thing, so that's different. That's different. Anyway, yeah,
He might have that too. We don't know.
I take issue with a lot of things that he says for obvious reasons. I do think this is like the perfect, opposite, because these are actual friends. So more than just being gentlemanly, sportsman-like characters, these riders are actually friends with each other. And what do you like in that case? They're gonna be nice to each other. I would hope that's how you're supposed to with your friends. So maybe with Van der Poel and Van Aert, there's like it's a little bit icier. They're rivals, but they're not close friends. But this was the perfect opposite of what former 7-time not actually winner of the Tour de France said, which is everybody should kind of hate each other. I don't know exactly how to phrase what he said, but yeah.
Yeah, I have no time for it whatsoever. I mean, I think Pogačar and Matthews drove to Italy together from Monaco. They are legitimately, they're training partners, I believe, and that has helped Matthews out no end in some of his climbing ability at tours obviously not in the past couple of years, but certainly a little while ago. I think he attributed part of that Tour de France win in a year not that far in the past to training with Pogačar. I don't know. I think that's one of the bits that I love about the sport is that everyone does seem to be supportive of each other. Obviously, it's very, very clear within teams, but even within teams, sometimes because of different programs and different types of rider, some riders won't meet their teammates, certain teammates, for a whole season. But these are, where are you supposed to make friends if you don't make friends in the peloton? These are people that this is the equivalent of going for after dinner drinks. No, you've got to make friends.
Well, and I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is the two riders that he's friends with, that Pogačar is friends with or are friends with him, are not riders that he's generally competing with, right? Like Milan-San Remo is really the only race in the calendar where he is really up against Michael Matthews and Jasper Philipsen. Well, Flanders, kind of, yeah. But there's not that many, right? And most of the time, and his primary rival in Jonas Vingegaard, it is a bit icier, right? Like, I wouldn't say Pogačar is really icy with anybody, Vingegaard too. But it's not so friendly, right? They're not buddies. And I think, I think that the argument is stupid because people can be friends with whoever they want. And Phil Guyman was the one that actually initially posted this that caught my eye. And he made a good point, which is like, they know where the finish line is. And when you're past the finish line, you can go back to not being a dickhead to your buddies again. And the other thing is I just think it's not really it's not a relevant argument in that, like, I'm not sure, it's not a problem. Like there's not this sort of the riders that tend to be up against each other head to head all the time still are not generally friends. So it's sort of like this it's a false premise.
I also think, we've seen from Vingegaard and Pogačar in particular, they're both pretty. They're not mean people. You know, Pogacar is a kind of a jokester. He's got a jokester vibe, and Vingegaard maybe doesn't have a super strong, talkative vibe to him, but he's also not a mean guy. He just seems very, you know, he's like an upstanding, gentlemanly fellow who maybe doesn't say a whole lot. He's not going to go out of his way to say mean stuff to someone, and yet they're both cold-blooded killers when they decide they want to win a bike race. And I think with well, I guess we're not saying his name. His point maybe is that you need to be cold-blooded to be a good athlete, but like I don't think these two are mutually exclusive. I think Vingegaard is plenty cold-blooded when he wants to leave everybody behind at the Tour de France, or when Tadej Pogacar decides like, okay, I'm 80K from the finish in Siena. I guess I'm going to attack here. To me, that's all that really matters. If he can be cold-blooded in those moments, he can then go back to being a, you know, little meme lord when he wants to, and be friendly with his friends. That's fine as long as he keeps doing what he. I mean, we're watching him right now. We just watched him at Catalunya in the horrible conditions. Just decide, okay, I'm going to go win the race by more than a minute now. That's all that really matters.
Agreed. All right, well, let's leave that there. Again, we don't necessarily like to engage in this sort of thing all that often, but it was just one that kind of grabbed me again and kind of annoyed me. So brought it into the show. Let's move on. We have another bit of news for this week. We, of course, no Johnny Shorts this week because Johnny is not in this week. Maybe that will return next week. But we do have some other news. The Pope is selling his Pinarello kit. That's a weird headline. What's going on?
Yes, well, I mean, you can get the full story on Escape Collective. Our very own Ian Trelua obviously told the story much better than I shall. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, the Pope's Pinarello is for sale. Egan Bernal gave him the Pinarello after his Giro d'Italia win. It's a tastefully painted bike in the colours of the Argentinian flag. It's got the Pope's name, which I have forgotten.
Well,
on
Francis
the top
is his
tube.
papal name.
I am not a religious human being. Yeah. So anyway, the bike is being sold on his behalf, sort of, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's been valued at somewhere between 20 and 30,000 euros. It's currently, well, at time of writing, it was 7,000 euros. Same website where Vingegaard's Tour de France winning bike, Pinot's last Tour de France bike was sold. It's, what is it, Katawiki, which likes to think it's where passionate objects are sold or something along those lines. That sounds really bad. Passionate objects. Anyway,
that seems low to me. Does that seem low to you? Like there's got to be an.
Or do you mean the valuation?
Even 20, 30,000. I mean, you're talking about the Pope's Pinarello, right?
Yeah.
Like that bike at full retail with no Pope association whatsoever is like 15 grand.
Well,
yeah.
that was when it was new, right? How old is it now?
Yeah, but it's still got the plastic wrapping on it. So
yeah, but as we know, I mean, like all components are
True.
horrible
Yeah,
after 2 years, and they're replaced by the new.
and it's been stored cross-chained apparently.
Ooh.
Oh
No.
Unrideable.
Yeah.
Could be broken. We don't know.
No, I agree. It does seem low, especially if it was gifted to Egan Bernal to the Pope. I mean, that story alone makes it seem like it should be worth something.
Yeah, and on this web, so Thibaut Pinot's bike, it only sold for 12,600 euros, which is probably retail price for that.
That's shocking.
It is. There we go.
There's. I mean, we know this. We know there are a lot of wealthy cycling fans out there. There are people. I'm back in Boulder for the week, and I see many people riding around on regular bikes that cost way more than that, right? The $20,000 S-Works kind of thing. If you have the money for a $20,000 S-Works, you should be buying Thibaut Pinot's final bike for at least that much, I would think. Really, what are you doing with your money?
Maybe the people who have all that money are, in this specific instance, are like not fans of Roman Catholicism. That could be like they don't want to. Like Henry VIII has all the money, and he has decided he doesn't want to, spend it on the Pope. That's that's an explanation, maybe.
I'd like to hear what Egan Bernal thinks. But he is a practicing Roman Catholic. I mean, I'm sure that young Mr. Bernal never expected his papal, hero to actually get onto the bicycle. But still, I don't know. I guess there is probably a warehouse somewhere that is solely for gifts for the Pope. That is filled on a daily basis. So we probably shouldn't have too many hard feelings, but that's got to hurt a little bit.
I mean, well, given the fact that Egan Bernal is, as you say, a practicing Catholic, he should buy it back, right? Like, then he has a Pope bike,
There we go.
That is
which as a Catholic is pretty cool.
Indeed.
That's what he should do. All right. That's all the thoughts we have on the Pope's bike. we're gonna move on. We have a bunch of bike racing coming up. We have, so first of all, the Tour of Flanders is not that far away at this point. It is, as of recording, about a week, 10 days, 11 days, something like that from the Tour of Flanders. 12 days. I can't do math.
Some days.
Something like that. Yeah, not that far. And there are a couple races between now and then in similar style, the sort of lead up to the Ronde. Dane, let's do a little mini preview of what's coming between now and then, actually really between now and the next episode of Placeholders, so people can know what to expect this weekend.
On the one-day racing side, you've got 3 one-day World Tour events on the men's side and 2 on the women's side. Brugge de Panne for both men and women. We've got E3 Saxo Bank Classic for just the men, and then Gent-Wevelgem this weekend. So yeah, it's really kicking off in the Flemish Classics department. Brugge de Panne on the men's side, I think, is a great chance for Jasper Philipsen to add to his tally of big one-day race wins. And it's probably going to be a bunch of different sprinters vying for that, possibly Tim Merlier, Fabio Jakobsen.
Unless it rains, then we get a fun little breakaway, maybe.
But, Philipsen, I think, is a pretty...
This is also true, yeah.
Tough character. Yeah.
As we saw on Saturday. My memory is short.
I'm looking at this list and seeing that there's actually a handful of Visma Lease Bike Monster energy riders that are going to be contending, and hopefully they will be able to score me some fake points. And then the women's side, also quite a few good sprinters there. Lisa Balsamo, who just showed us that she's a good sprinter, not for the first time.
Reminded us that she's
Reminded us. That's a good way of that's a good way of putting it.
She did beat Kopecky.
Yeah, who is herself quite a talented sprinter. Balsamo will be there. Charlotta Kuhl will be there, which I think Kuhl is probably I would guess the fastest finisher in the race. Yeah, we'll see.
Abby would describe Charlotte Kuhl as the most pure sprinter in the women's peloton. If there is such a thing as a pure sprinter in women's cycling, it's a one-person category made up of Charlotte Kuhl.
And if there is a one-day race that a pure sprinter would appreciate, it's a race that goes from starts at 11 meters, ends at 8 meters, and doesn't really, the biggest hill is 35 meters above sea level. There's not a lot of climbing.
Is it an overpass?
Yeah. They go to -2, actually, shortly before the finish. So then they have to climb back up from 2 meters below sea level.
Oof.
But yeah, it's a pretty flat race. Out
of the ocean.
E3 Saxo Bank Classic, formerly the E3 Harelbeke E3 Price, not a flat race. A great mini Flanders-esque race. And that's the one on the men's side where we're going to see a few more of the real big heavy hitters. Not that Jasper Philipsen's not a heavy hitter. Apologies, Jasper. But
no, he needs to do like one more interesting thing, and then he could be a heavy hitter.
He did crush the Tour de France sprints, though.
Nope. Needs to do one more interesting thing, and then he's a heavy hitter.
All right.
He's
Jasper
a medium-sized hitter.
What would be would E3 be a heavy hitter?
I think so.
Yeah, probably. Okay. I don't know. Well, Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel are there, so we are going to see them hopefully battling. Biniam Girmay, Matej Mohoric, a bunch of other big names. Mess Peterson over at Trek will be there. So that on Friday will be a great opportunity to see who's in good shape for Flanders, which is, as you said, Caley, coming up here soon. We'll finally get to see Wout van Aert doing classic-y things again after he decided to go to altitude for a month after he won Kuurne Brussel Kuurne. So that's on Friday, and then Gent-Wevelgem,
which should be illegal,
on Sunday. Which somewhere in between these two, it's more of a chance of a sprint, but it's also harder than Brugge de Panne. So tough to say what is going to happen there. But Christophe Laporte is going to lead the way for Visma in that race. No Wout van Aert at this point, as far as I can tell.
But Christophe Laporte is poorly.
He's going to come back. He's going to win. He's going to get my fake team lots of points. Mathieu van der Poel is going to be there. Biniam Girmay, Tim Merlier, Mark Cavendish will be there at Gent-Wevelgem. Maybe he'll finish the race. We'll see. Yeah, that's on the men's side. Women's side, Lotte Kopecky, Lorena Wiebes. I mean, I probably could just list the whole SD Works Pro Time roster. But yeah, Lisa Balsamo will be there as well, along with several other potential contenders for that race. Charlotte Kuhl. Shirin Van Anrooy for Trek gives them a pretty good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch. They got a good strong roster as well. Yeah. So 3, again, men's World Tour 1 days coming up. 2 women's World Tour 1 days. Opportunities for both sprinters and Classic Z type specialists alike. And then after that, we'll be able to know who's in good form coming into the Tour of Flanders, which is a week and a half away.
And we're going to be there, all 3 of us.
It's the first time I'll get to see Kit in person.
Yeah, first time I get to see. I'm looking forward to meeting all these people.
I can't wait. All right. Thanks, Dane, for that, so I guess, kind of micro preview of what's happening between now and the next episode. At the next episode, we won't be in Belgium yet, but we'll be about to leave. And then following that, we're going to have a bunch of extra episodes, including some live episodes from Belgium. If you listen to this podcast a lot, you would have heard us talking about our member summit happening in Kortrijk in 2 weeks' time-ish. We're going to be doing some live pods for some members that are there. And of course, those episodes will also end up on your Escape Collective feed. So keep an ear out. There's going to be a bunch of extra episodes throughout that Holy Week block. Now, it's time for a little member weekly pain. Dane, who is our contestant this week?
We have a cool, interesting little... I guess we point this out when we introduce him, so I won't spoil it here. But Aaron Humphrey is our member for this week, and he's got a cool connection to one of our podcasters, which you'll hear about now, I guess. All right, so we have another member. We have another member showdown for Weekly Pain here, and this week. And possibly in the weeks to come. We'll find out, depending on how you do. Aaron Humphrey is our member, is our contestant who will be taking on, well, his choosing, really, whether he wants to face Johnny or myself. And Aaron is, well, there's a couple of interesting facts about Aaron. You know, we asked Aaron for some interesting facts. I have one about Aaron that I want the world to know, and that's that Aaron has the patience of a saint for being patient with us as we set this up across many time zones. Aaron, you are a fellow Coloradan, which is cool. You also happen to have had some history with an Escape Collective, podcast personality that we thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You want to tell us what that was?
Yeah, many, many years ago, I coached Abby Mickey and her sister, Katie, at Aspen Valley Ski Club when they were both young ski racers.
Who was better?
Oh, man. You think my memory works that well? I'm getting old. Plus, I'm not gonna lay that out right now. Both of them were great skiers and a ton of fun to ski with, but I think Abby was about 11 or 12, and Katie was like maybe 9 years old, something like that.
Abby is a ripper skier for anybody out there who was not aware of that.
Yeah.
She went on to become a pro athlete. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty cool, part that you played there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I was fortunate and over about 20 years got to work with lots and lots of really good, young, strong athletes. We had a ton of fun, and it was great watching them race. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right, so Caley, you are going to host the actual question-asking portion of this. You've come up with the categories that are going to stump Johnny and myself and Aaron. So I'm going to turn it over to you here.
Well, we're going to play, the traditional Weekly Pain here. We've got a couple different games of categories. Basically, I've prepared in case Aaron keeps winning. So I have a bunch ready. But first, Aaron, you have to choose who you want to compete against. Do you want to compete against Johnny or Dane for this first round?
It's a hard choice, but I think I'll throw it to Johnny this round.
Oh, dear.
Excellent.
I thought that'd be coming.
And then I asked Dane this, and he didn't know the answer. How do you feel about sort of like doping era cycling? What's your knowledge like in the sort of like 1995 to 2010 kind of time frame? Because really, if you're going to take on Johnny, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, totally. I think I'm pretty good from about 98, 99 forward.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Yeah, mid-90s will be a little bit tough, but...
I don't think Johnny was born yet, so that's perfect.
I was alive, just.
I think the T-shirt I'm wearing is older than he is.
All right, so
Maybe.
we're going to. In that case, I might save one of the older ones for a second. We're going to kick off here with, again, a game of categories. This is a very simple game. All you have to do is give me names that fit in this particular category. If you can't do so, it goes to the other person. If that other person can, then give me a name. Then they win the round.
This is so much more nerve-wracking than going up against colleagues. I don't know why. Like, there's no material difference at all. But for some reason, I'm just like, I'm already mentally crumbling.
Yeah, Ronan, I feel like Ronan was, it was really, the pressure, the stress was very high.
Yeah.
So you're not alone in that.
I think
Okay.
you're giving me more credit for intelligence than I deserve, but here we go.
All right, so category 1. Oh, okay. We'll start with kind of a fun one and a more recent one. So this category, actually, the answers are not people. The answers are teams. I need you to give me jerseys, teams with jerseys that had a significant amount of blue in them in 2023. And significant is decided by me, a partially colorblind man, and so maybe somewhat subjective. But I've got a list here that I think is blue. May or may not be, to be perfectly honest, but I'm pretty sure it is. And let's kick off with Aaron. Give me a team that was blue last year.
Let's go with Quick Step.
Quick Step was indeed blue. Johnny.
Groupama FDJ.
Correct. Back over to you, Aaron.
Alpecin-Deceuninck.
Yep, that'll do it. Johnny.
This is maybe a gamble depending on how strict you are with your colours. But I'm going to go for Astana, Kazakhstan.
So that one was, to my colorblind eyes, kind of on the edge, but I'm going to give it to you. I am going to
Okay.
give it to you. What, Dane, what?
I think they're blue. They're blue for sure.
Okay.
It's just a strong, shade, but
Just to put my colorblindness in context, my 2.5-year-old daughter is significantly better at colors than I am. Just so you know. So if we get this one wrong,
Is that
We'll
good
go
or
get
bad for bringing her up? Like, is that giving her confidence or is it like too much confidence?
probably too much confidence. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I ask her what color things are all the time, and she thinks I actually don't know. Because I don't. Anyway, back over to you, Aaron.
How about Little Trek?
Oh, there is. So that was another edge case. There's a bit of blue on that one, but
quite
I'll
a
give it
lot.
to you. Yeah,
I guess it sort of depends on what part of the season, too, before they changed it over.
that is true. That is true. Ooh, that's some deep knowledge right there. All right, Johnny, back to you.
I can't even remember what their kit looked like last year because this season's is such an abomination. But were DSM Firmenich blue last year?
So they had 2 blue lines down the back, and
But it
so I
wasn't
have
blue.
it. I have it
was
in a
blue.
maybe category here.
Okay.
Dane, what do you think? Do we give
blue,
it to Johnny?
you said a significant amount. I feel like that's significant enough.
Okay, we'll give it to you. Back over to you, Aaron. According to my eyes, there's 3 left.
3.
No, 2 left. Sorry, 2 left.
Oh, we're getting down there.
Somebody said Francis Deschamps, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 left.
Now I'm getting into the cobwebs of my brain.
I'm trying to think.
If it makes you feel any better, Aaron, I'm also kind of stumped here. I've got a maybe, and that's it. Like it's.
Oh.
You guys are going pretty deep. here.
I'm kind of running. I'm envisioning some of the women's jerseys too, but all the ones that are coming to mind are so colorful. I don't know if they count.
They all look like SD Works.
And
2 left.
It has to be World Tour or Conti.
World Tour teams. World Tour teams. Yep. And we do want you to win this round because we want you to stick around next week. So I will give you a hint if I need to.
Okay, yeah, lay it on me.
Habla Español.
Movie star.
There we go.
They call themselves the Blues, although it's
do.
like
They
purpley blue.
Johnny, there is 1 left. If you get this one, then you've completed it, and we have to move on.
That was my one that I had found in the crevices of my brain, and I've only lasted this long because we've been putting the draft episode together, and so I've been going through all of the riders. Otherwise, I would have lost like 2 teams ago. I think I'm going to have to cede, to lay down my collection of blue jerseys and admit defeat.
Congratulations, Aaron. You win.
Well done.
Sorry, Johnny.
Who was it?
The last one.
Does Bahrain count? They have blue in their jersey.
No, Bahrain has got. So I had, and maybe it's so here's with my particular type of colorblindness, it's blue and purple look really similar. So I'm pretty sure this is blue. Was Jayco blue last year?
Oh.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
There we go.
think
So
of them
that
as
was
having
the
more
last one.
green. But
Yeah.
maybe that's their older one who was more green.
Yeah, they kept going.
so
They've gone through changes.
The photo I found at the beginning of last year was sort of blue with white shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was congrats, Aaron.
Well,
Let's
thank you.
Next one.
Well, Aaron, you'll be back next week. Congratulations. Let's head back over. I think it's time probably for a bit of Escape After Dark. Well done, Aaron. You'll be back next week to see if you can take on the esteemed Placeholder crew once again, see how far you can go. This is, of course, where the free version of this podcast ends. We are going to head into Placeholders After Dark, the members only section of this podcast. We have some important things to discuss. I have a vacuum update for everybody. That's pretty key. And we're gonna be talking about some of the best cycling sponsors. Which there's some
Best and
really
weirdest.
Wait, have
Some
you
of the
gotten
best
the
and weirdest.
sponsorship
Couldn't
for
really
your
be
vacuum?
best.
Are they sponsoring you now, Caley?
Shark vacuums. I haven't reached out for
do that.
sponsorship yet, but I probably should.
Caley
I
Fretz
honestly
powered by
probably
Shark
should.
Vacuums.
Yeah. Anyway, we got an update on that. We'll have a little sponsor chat, and we've got some other little tidbits for this week's Placeholders After Dark. Escape After Dark? I think it was called Escape After Dark. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you're on the free feed, if you're on the member feed, keep listening. We're going to keep going. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.